Welcome, college baseball fans. I'm Monty Taylor. I'm joined by the hardest working man in college baseball, definitely in the ACC. He's reminded me all night. It's Micah. Micah, how was your first day at the ACC tournament?
It was the worst day of my life because I was reminded that I do not know ball pretty much all day. But besides that, it was a blast, Monty. I'm actually a little tan right now. I don't know if the camera's picking that up or not.
Same.
But yeah, as he sat in the press box the whole game, where I was out with those common folk just enjoying ball like everybody else. Now, granted, I was sitting right behind home plate, so was I really common folk? I don't know, but we'll just say I was.
Yeah, we had some great games today. We kicked off with an upset early. Miami came to play. Ultimately, it came down to Daniel Cuvée. He hit two monster home runs that ultimately was the difference in the ball game. As Miami took the first game of the day. Micah, you want to talk a little bit about Miami?
I think, right, like we know this Miami team's dangerous. I'm going to move this mic since Monty's not so far away now. But, this Miami team's been dangerous all year. We know what they're capable of winning, but they just haven't done that type of number this year. And it's been obviously very frustrating for them. But, kudos to Nick. He got it right. He called Miami on this one. Obviously, I had Louisville winning the pool, as some people reminded me. Shout out to the multiple Clemson fans that stopped me on throughout the night to ask me if I still had Louisville winning the pool. Yes, I do have Louisville still winning the pool. I'm not going to back down from that. Obviously, it's not possible. But, I think – I know we're not going to be previewing, right, the Clemson game, but it sets up pretty well for Miami now. It really does, with the idea of Gage Zeal being able to go. They didn't use too many bullpen arms. This was the Daniel Cuvée show. And, for Louisville, you said you were in the press conference with Dan McDonnell, they didn't feel like they did much wrong. It was Miami just made some stuff happen. Both Cuvé's home runs came with two strikes. The other, I'm not like how else they scored, but those were also with two strikes. Two-strike hitting was a really big thing for Miami, and Louisville threw their best guys. Cuvée got to both Webster and Bivin, arguably the two best guys that you could have thrown in that game. Miami they made plays. And I saw some of the guys on the concourse, Monty, actually at that Duke Virginia Tech game, and you could tell they're just locked in. They know that they want to be a postseason team. I know everyone, including myself, have written them off, but it's still possible. So I'd more tip my hat to the team of the day, by the way, since we're not going to be doing mornings with Micah, the team of the day, the Miami Hurricanes.
But and when Micah says it's possible, the only way it's possible is by winning the tournament. Correct. But that is not a crazy concept because Gage Zeal goes on Thursday. And he's been lights out, and he was on the mound when they beat Clemson the first time. So all of a sudden, you get Gage Zeal out there, and if he dominates the Clemson lineup again and they get just enough offense, you're looking at Miami winning the pool and being 2 wins away from stealing a bid from somebody that was probably going to be going to the NCAA. Well, that would have been going to the NCAA tournament. That won't be because Miami came in and stole it. So really exciting stuff there for Miami. Gage Zeal is confirmed to pitch against Clemson. Just a monster performance. And Dan McDonnell said in his press conference, again, there wasn't much they could do. They got 2 strikes on them, and it was just a credit to Miami. And on the flip side, Miami with what they got out of, the leadoff spots with Jacoby Long and Edgardo Villegas, both those guys got on in front of Cuvée in both situations that he hit the home run.
Yeah, and that's right. Luke, now I remember, obviously, Lucas Costello had a big home run as well. That one was big for him, and just in general, friend of the show. Love you, Lucas. But yeah, no, that was obviously a really big deal for them. But we'll obviously transition over to, would you say the best game of the day? Was the best game of the day Georgia Tech and Florida State? That Duke Virginia Tech game was good, but I felt like it was only good for an inning or two. Where
about
Georgia
3 or 4.
Yeah,
early innings.
Yeah, early. Basically, once Duke took the lead, it kind of felt like from there.
Once Cruson had the outfield
play,
assist,
exactly, which we'll obviously get to. But I think that Georgia Tech Florida State game was exactly what I'd hoped for. you were obviously getting the press conference, so you can go ahead and watch, clips of that from Coach Hall and the guys. But, you could tell that Georgia Tech was feisty, right? I mean, they did everything that they could. I mean, at the end of the day, Florida State just had a little bit more offensively. I mean, they lived off the 2-run home run. I mean, it was Ferrer, Cantu, and Dingus with all had 2-run home runs. Obviously, Tibbs did his thing getting on base. I mean, it was a hit by committee kind of thing for Florida State. And
Smith had, I can't remember what he did in his 5th appearance, but his first 4 plate appearances, he went 2 for 4, but all 4 of those balls put in play were over 100 miles an hour exit velocity. He hits the ball hard. The really intriguing thing in this game is what happened in the 8th and 9th inning. In the 8th inning, we started to see it was an 8-6 lead for Florida State, and we see Jamie Arnold start to get warm in the bullpen. And which is very interesting because we're thinking, they can't burn him, right? And they did not burn him. He did pitch, but apparently the discussion was that it would be a normal bullpen day, and he just did it live. So he will still start against Virginia on Friday. He only threw 9 or 10 pitches. But originally he was going to come in an 8-6 game. Ultimately, they scored a bunch of insurance, but then Georgia Tech, we know what they can do. They had done it already earlier in the game. It was 12-7, and the bases were loaded, and Link Jarrett didn't want to mess around, so he brought in his ace to get the save.
I love that approach. I mean, the only thing that it says to me is the belief in the Florida State bullpen, right? I mean, they wanted to win the game, and I don't necessarily blame them, right? I mean, you had Matthew Ellis coming up with a chance to tie the game. I mean, like I mentioned, he likes to hit home runs in the gold uniform, so I didn't hate it. I mean, Georgia Tech would not go away. I mean, if they can get out of that 8th inning, I mean, they win that game. I mean, it was very similar to what we saw on that replayed game, or not replayed, but recontinued game that, happened on Saturday with, Georgia Tech taking the lead, and then Florida State took it right back, and then Georgia Tech took it and then closed it out. This time, obviously, Georgia Tech had to play from behind. So that was really the only difference. But that was by far one of the most fun games for me on the day, just because, again, it felt like even when it was 8-1 Florida State, like Georgia Tech was putting together quality at bats. They were kind of threatening. Florida State was getting out of it. And you could tell like Georgia Tech was going to break through at some point, and they did, but just not enough to get there.
I don't know about, they may have put together good at bats, but they had 1 hit through 6 innings.
Yeah.
But then they did go on that, they batted around, even bloated the bases and had a chance to take the lead. But the bottom of their lineup did really well in Zmarzlak, Kurse, and Von Lackey. Von Lackey's out there as a freshman to be a defensive catcher, and he went 2 for 4, which really bodes well for him moving forward. But Florida State's really set up nicely now because Jamie Arnold and then Carson Dorsey and then Leiter is still apparently out there begging to be put into the bullpen. I saw him pacing around in the dugout at times, waiting for an opportunity to go out of the bullpen, but ultimately it didn't go with him. Obviously, Jamie went out there, but what do you think of Florida State's chances now?
I think they're good, right? But I think at the end of the day, the more I think about it, this was, again, Virginia would have known either way, but now it just changes Virginia's approach for tomorrow. We'll preview that shortly. But, I just think that, again, Florida State, anytime you throw Jamie Arnold out there, you have a chance to win a baseball game. And that lineup can hit, and we've seen Virginia struggle with limiting explosive offenses before. So, that was by far the most competitive. We saw 2 NCAA tournament teams in that one. Yep. That was by far the most competitive baseball game we've seen of the 3 we've had so far. So,
and Georgia Tech's, they're probably in.
They should be in.
They should be in, but they're not going to feel comfortable. They're going to go out and want to get that W tomorrow to feel a lot more comfortable about that situation.
Yeah, which again is obviously justifiable. I think Georgia Tech is fine because the ACC is not going to get 7 teams in, or just 7 teams in, and that would be right now we have 7 locks, and that's not including Georgia Tech and Louisville. So there's no way the ACC is only going to get 7. So I think Georgia Tech should be fine, but again, you just never know.
Yep.
So.
And if you want to see any of the press conferences from the Georgia Tech Florida State game or the Duke game or the Duke press conference, those clips are on my Twitter. There wasn't much to give you for the Virginia Tech press conference. And then, of course, Miami is not kind on videos. So I've got recordings, and I shared Dan McDonald's, some of his words on Twitter as well. But the videos for those 3 teams, Georgia Tech, Florida State, and Duke are up live. But yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. And then obviously the last game, Virginia Tech, Duke. Duke walks the bases loaded, walks in a run. Higgins comes out, and then what was it, a sack fly or something? And
yeah, David McCann just missed.
Yeah, just missed a grand slam. That's right. And then next batter, Carson DiMartini takes one for a ride.
It's funny. I don't know if you had this thought, but when Carson DiMartini came up, I sat there and told myself, I said, David McCann just missed. DiMartini will not. And I was like, they need to pitch around him, put him on base. I know that's not the conventional wisdom there with, because it was runners on the corners because of the sack fly at that point. So normally you wouldn't necessarily do that. But DiMartini is that good. Clay Grady's not going to hit a grand slam on you, or he's not as likely to. He can still do it, but he's not a home run hitter. He's a contact guy. So now, and DiMartini did exactly that and puts Virginia Tech up 4-0, and then it was sack fly, then the 3-run homer, and then they got another run somewhere.
And that was it. That was 5.
That was 5. Okay.
Yeah, because they had the walk. They walked in the run.
That's right.
Sack
I
fly.
forgot about the loaded bases.
Because again, that was I think what was probably most frustrating for me was it was 5 runs, but the walk that loaded the bases and the walk that brought in the run, especially the walk that loaded in the run, I'm pretty sure he went around on that check swing. They said he didn't go, brought in the run, but I was sitting right there. If that bat didn't cross home plate, it touched the very edge of it. So,
by the way, David McCann did homer late in the game against Bielenson. That was a 2-run blast or 3? It's 2.
2.
Yeah, to make it 11-8. So Bielenson did give up 2 runs, but that was too little too late. Never really felt like Virginia Tech was going to threaten against one of the best closers in the country.
No, I mean, like Virginia Tech, they scored 5 runs and it never felt like they did anything.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that kind of crossed my mind was the energy from the dugout that I could feel sitting pretty close to it from that home run from DiMartini made me think. And then the next half inning, Parliament comes out and sits him down 1-2-3 again. And then that's when I was like, okay, maybe Virginia Tech actually has it this time. But similar to the Virginia game, they didn't. 6-run inning in the 3rd, and then it just kind of spirals out of control from there.
Well, and by the way, it was a big day for friends of the program. We had Lucas Costello hit a home run this morning, and then I guess it was the afternoon by the time he hit it. But then we had
we had Saved by the Bell.
Zach Morris hit 2 home runs to basically lead that comeback and the lead. But I really want to talk about Chase Cruson, who had a big game because
he was phenomenal.
He ultimately hit the single that gave them the two runs to go from 5-4 to 6-5, and then Virginia Tech was about to tie it. Carson DiMartini, he gunned him down at the plate, and that really was the momentum killer right there. I think Tech still had a chance at that moment.
That would have tied it.
Exactly. Would have tied it, and momentum would have kind of started to shift back towards Virginia Tech, but that ultimately killed it, and Virginia Tech really never got back into it after that.
Yeah, what I learned tonight was this Duke team is so resilient. They're not just talented. They're not well coached, or not just well coached, I should say. That sounds terrible. Not just well coached. But, that team they battled. They had every reason to just kind of shut down, right? But they didn't. And it was impressive to see this team, again, they control their own destiny now. The NC State game and what tomorrow night?
Thursday.
Night,
It's going to be Virginia Tech, NC State first.
That's right. Thursday night is the championship game.
Yep.
So that's obviously great for Duke. So let's transition over to previewing, obviously, the next games, 3 games. We start off at 11 a.m., Virginia, Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech will be the home team for that game because they were the road one today.
Yep, that's correct. What do you expect Virginia to do?
It's going to be interesting because I don't know how much Oak wants to mess with the routine. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes with Blanco, but then he might be,
Yeah.
But then he's lined up to do a bullpen game. But Virginia still wants to get wins to help their hosting case. That's the other thing. It's a very funky situation because tournament purposes, they don't need this game at all.
Yeah. I think they should go with Owen Cody. He didn't pitch a lot on Saturday because he got hit around so much. Saturday. So I think, personally, my assumption is you go Owen Cody here. He hasn't really had an established spot in the rotation.
Yep.
So it's not like you're really messing up some formal routine. I know pushing Blanco back a day is going to be a little bit of a problem, but I would say that pitching first thing Friday morning isn't all that much different from a routine of a Thursday night as it was previously. And again, he was the Friday guy before that. So it's a little bit of a tailoring. That's what I think Virginia
I like
should do.
that. I don't know if he's going to do that.
Yeah.
Oak does Oak things.
Yeah.
But,
he knows baseball a little bit better than me. But, that's what I would assume might be the best strategy. Obviously on the Georgia Tech side, I'm assuming they're going to throw Finateri. I would assume. My only question is man, it is a little bit of a short rest. It's just a week early or a day earlier than he would normally throw on a week, But I would assume they're going to have to throw, right? Because they're going to also
it's going to be I think it's going to be all hands on deck. You're going to have Cam Jones available.
Cam Jones
as well.
will be. That's true because you're not playing again, so you might as well, yeah.
And you want that win to feel a little bit more comfortable. So I think you don't need Finateri to go 5.
Yeah.
In theory, but again, their only reliable bullpen arm right now was Dawson Brown, and he pitched today.
Yeah, true.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how Georgia Tech handles it. And remember, Georgia Tech just took 2 out of 3 from Virginia about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, it's gonna be a fun series, and that Georgia Tech lineup, as we saw, very, very dangerous. And Virginia's pitching never really settled. It's a little bit better than before, but still a lot of alarm bells for that bullpen in particular.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we'll do just a quick pick after this, but the game of the day that I'm most excited for, and the one that I'm the most pissed about missing, do I have to put an E on that if I say pissed? Oh well, regardless, is Gritzburg tomorrow against Wake. I actually got a chance to talk to some of the Wake guys or Wake people I know because they were obviously at the ballpark watching some of the game tonight. It is going to be Falco. That's what everyone's saying is it's going to be Falco throwing.
Yep.
It sounds like Pitt's going to throw Sokol. I should have just went up to one of their guys and just asked, but I didn't have the balls to do
I thought it was interesting with that they're going Sokol. I would have a month ago I would have said, of course it's Sokol. Andrade's not been very effective, but the last 3 weeks Andrade's been very, very good. So it's like, was that a tougher decision or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is just because of the short rest thing. Again, shout out to Nick Kurtz's dad for kind of getting in our DMs and kind of reminding us, there is a potential future aspect to this. There is a player safety aspect to this. It's not just not everyone's got a rubber arm like Mr. Chuck Bielson does. So, but I think at the end of the day, I'm feeling pretty good about. Hello, thanks, Knoxville.
I just thought I want to make sure I got that up.
No Rocky Top tonight, though. Okay?
No Rocky Top. This is not an SEC show.
But
I don't know why anyone would do that.
But yeah, right. I don't know anyone that would ever sing Rocky Top. But anyways, at the end of the day, I'm so excited for this one. I'm gonna be dialed in. I'm gonna be texting Monty how upset that I am that I'm missing that. It's gonna be a fun one, and
I'll be too busy watching the game to see Micah's text.
Yeah, he's gonna ignore me. He only texts me when he's like, "Wow, who's talking to you now?" behind home plate.
Yeah, because otherwise, if I don't, Micah will just brag about it.
That's not true. I have no ego at all. But I mean, what do you? Neither team has played, so obviously both teams have to win this to create a de facto championship game with their game against UNC. So where's your head at this? Because I still am a little worried about the Wake decisions. I mean, again, you don't want to pitch Chase Burns on short rest. I agree with that, but you are kind of actively saying we're saving our best for the best team that it's in our pool. And if I'm Pitt, I'm posting that around the clubhouse.
And I get that Wake Forest should have no problem winning this game, but there's a reason we like Pittsburgh. There's a reason we call them Gritzburg. There's a reason they call themselves Gritzburg, and there's a reason why they're in the ACC tournament, despite potentially being the 14th best team on paper. Yet they've managed to finish 2 spots ahead of whomever. That you can't overlook them, and they've won their last 2 ACC series.
Yeah. And I actually feel better about Pitt's pitching staff tomorrow than I do Wake's. Because of it being a bullpen game with Wake, that means it's kind of all hands on deck to a point where tomorrow, an ideal word for Pitt, right? You're going 5 or 6 with Sokol or Andrade, or whoever you decide to throw, and then it's Phil Fox's game. And Phil Fox is, when I saw he was second team ACC, I get that we have a lot of great pitchers in the conference. I was a little upset, though, because of what he means to Pitt.
I'll tell you right now, I voted for him to be an All-American for the National College Baseball Writers Association.
Yeah.
But,
but, it's just – I can't wait for this game. I know there's going to be a lot of Wake Forest fans that said they're going to be there. So I obviously can't wait to see all the content they're going to post and I'll be sharing and stuff. But it should be a really fun one for sure. And then the last game of the night, I hate to say meaningless game, but it's pretty meaningless.
I mean, so is the morning one. So
I would say the
Virginia Tech's pretty much toast, and
Virginia Tech has nothing to gain
Georgia
at this
Tech
point.
Can feel more comfortable. And
I mean, again, if Virginia Tech wins, I guess they could enter the chat, but that I think at this point, unfortunately, Virginia Tech's season is over after tomorrow night. And again, NC State. I mean, I guess NC State, you could say, right, losing to Virginia Tech hurts that opportunity to be a national seed because I mean that would put their RPI that would drop their RPI. So I guess there is something to play for. I hate the whole it's meaningless, but it's probably the most meaningless game of the three, just from a standpoint of has nothing to do with the tournament and has probably the least amount of NCAA tournament effect because, again, Georgia Tech has something to play for with trying to lock up a spot and UVA hosting as well. So, and again, like I think confidence-wise, you want to be 1-0 going into your game with not UNC, but Florida State. So, what are your thoughts on this one? I mean, I don't know if it's going to be good. I mean, it kind of felt like Virginia Tech didn't necessarily quit tonight, but it also felt like they didn't have much left in the tank to give.
I think their pitching staff's a bit gassed at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
between the Virginia series this weekend and now this.
I did ask Chef about whether Renfro's going to start tomorrow, and I don't know. John Chef's great, but interviewing him after loss can be difficult. He very short answers. Basically, they're going to see how Renfro feels. He basically said it depends on how he feels. That was the end of the response. So Renfro might start, might not. I would imagine he would. But the rest of the pitching staff's pretty gassed, it looked like to me.
Who do you think State goes with?
That's the question because you've kind of – I mean, I would probably say, well, Dominique Fritton pitched on Friday. You know, you could go bullpen completely and go with Ryan Marone or something like that.
I actually love that idea because so
you don't want to use Consiglio or Duden or Smith out of the bullpen, but other than that, everyone else should.
And Marone has been fantastic of late with his he just missed when Nick tweets out those stats. He just missed the cut by I think 2 innings pitched to be on what D1 baseball deems the amount of innings required, right, to be qualified to be in your top 10 or whatever list because it bumped up to 55 innings pitched because 55 games is the average for across the country, and he had 53 innings pitched. But if he was 2 more innings deep, he would have been on that list. Or if the number was dropped down to 2 more innings less, he would have been on that list. And I think that's a great idea because again, you want to save. You don't want to risk players' safety. Plus, I think if you're NC State, right, your expectation at this point is you're gonna be playing Saturday and Sunday. You're not just looking at okay, let's get through today and tomorrow, or obviously Wednesday, Thursday. We're trying to play on Saturday. We're trying to play on Sunday. So keeping Fritton available is huge. I think that's the right move.
Well, and Whitaker available.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, and Highfield of it. Well, one of them are going to have to pitch against Duke, but and you also want to make sure you've got the availability to shut down those the Duke offense that just went kind of
ballistic.
Yeah, they are so good in the mix. And again, I hate to plug my own thing again, but the mix I just posted about it. The mix of talented freshmen, and the graduate transfers. It's unbelievable what they've done together as a group. It's very, very good. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what NC State does pitching wise. Obviously, the lineup it's going to go out. Whoever you've got, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's not going to be a big factor. It's really about pitching matchups.
Yeah, how many home runs will AMAC hit tomorrow now? But that wraps up obviously the quick discussion of everything. Monty, I know we put out our brackets right. Has anything changed? What are your picks for the 3 games tomorrow?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we're going to stick with what we've got on our brackets for our official graphics, I guess.
Correct, yes.
But, things do change. Because,
well, we can do different, like the daily graphics. Those can
that's
change.
True. We can change that.
Because obviously I'm not going to recreate a bracket. I mean, I'd love to be able to do that because one of my pool teams is already eliminated, but we won't do that. We'll still ride with Louisville.
But yeah, I think things do change with obviously the way you're going to look at things because NC State's going to pitch somebody completely different than if Virginia Tech had won tonight.
Yeah.
So, but in the UVA Georgia Tech series, I still like UVA.
Okay.
I just think the Virginia Tech series is going to be a big confidence boost and a momentum boost for the team. and I just don't know what Georgia Tech pitching has left outside, even with Cam Jones and Aiden Vinatieri. That being said, the UVA's offense has to come to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had Georgia Tech winning this game in my bracket to begin with, so I'm going to still stick with that. I had that pool being a 1-1 pool all across the board, so I had Florida State winning against Georgia Tech today. So I'll stick with that because, again, I think just factoring in, again, what we know, Georgia Tech's a talented enough ball club. Heck, they did the series in Charlottesville 2 weekends ago. So at this point, you can't, or however long that was now. Yeah, I'm losing track of what weekend series was what. But, so I'll stick with that. Obviously, Georgia Tech side. Pitt and Wake. Did you ride with Pitt? I rode with Pitt, everybody, and I'm sticking with it. I think this team is scrappy. I don't like the idea of a bullpen game for Wake. I'm not saying they're overlooking North Carolina or overlooking Pitt for North Carolina because that's not fair to put that on these kids, right? I have so much belief in Pitt, and I think they're going to get the pitching that's going to keep them in it. And I mean, we saw it, right? We saw Pitt 2 weeks ago come out and just shove it down Florida State with their pitching staff and do enough offensively to get it done. I think they can do that again. Yeah,
they can. I think I did pick Wake Forest. I think I'm going to stick with Wake Forest, to make sure that if Pitt wins, Micah gets his he doesn't have to share the glory. I want to make sure he gets that credit.
And that way, if I'm wrong, then everyone can continue to come up to me and be like, oh, do you still have Pitt beating Wake?
But I everything Micah says about that reasoning, I can see it. I can agree with it to an extent. But ultimately, I'm going to stick with Wake Forest. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. And for NC State, Virginia Tech, I appreciate all the Hokies that came up and talked to me tonight. I think we're all in agreement, though, that this season's it's been a frustrating one, and maybe it's time to just move on to next year. So I'm rocking with the Wolfpack. I think this is the best team right now, hottest team at least, right, going into the tournament. So I think they're going to continue to ride that.
Yeah, hottest team.
And like you said, the arms for Virginia Tech, I don't know how much more they can pull from everybody.
And they have good arms. It's just I think they're gassed. I think it's just they just did not. They don't have enough quite.
And I don't know how you mentally bounce back 24 hours after what happened tonight. Where you see this potential win in your future, and then it just kind of quite literally falls by the wayside.
The last 2 games they've blown a 7-0 lead and then a 5-0 lead. So ultimately, it's got to be. It's quite frustrating, as Coach Sheff said today. The last 6 weeks have been really, really frustrating for Virginia Tech, and unfortunately, I like Virginia Tech. I think they are good enough to be a tournament team on the roster, but unfortunately, I think the thing just spiraled and snowballed, and they couldn't quite bounce back from all those losses week in and week out, and ultimately, that's going to be the difference. Yeah.
Well, that's going to obviously wrap this one up. Thank you, everybody. Again, I had so many people that came up and talked to me at Monty. I don't know if that happened to you, but probably again, I'm just that beautiful face everybody loves to see or probably wants to run away from. But it was great to have all these different individuals. I think every team had someone come up and talk to me throughout the day, which was great, very humbling. So I really appreciate that. Again, I will definitely not be in Charlotte tomorrow. I hope to be back near the end of the tournament. I'll be doing the same stuff I've kind of been doing, though, just from a suite in Greenville, South Carolina, with my full-time job in the Southern Conference tournament. So I'll still be watching games just like I did last year, just a little bit more. It won't be a home run footage from you won't see me waving to people from behind home plate, unfortunately, and I won't be wearing 2 different teams at once. Which shout out to everybody that gave me a hard time with that. I thought that was hilarious, and the people that loved it too. But Monty, let's I'm gonna go shower, but you're allowed to plug yourself, I guess. Sorry,
that's
sorry, I forgot this. I forgot the podcast is not all about me.
So. Right. I'll be doing the press conferences just like I did today. I might get some stories. Who knows? Obviously, the tweeting, but also hopefully some content with Duke baseball tomorrow. Obviously, they have the day off. But I'll be meeting up with Chad, see what kind of content we can get into with Duke baseball. Not sure what that's going to look like, but they're coming off a big win, and they're looking forward to that NC State series. Just keep an eye on our coverage. We're going to still have plenty of coverage coming, and obviously at some point, Nick, DJ, Grayson, they're all coming into town. Cole, former colleague, he is in town with Clemson. Is it the All Clemson Tiger site he's with, but just shouting him out as well. But it's going to be a great rest of the week.
Yeah. Well, good night, everybody. It's time for bed. Monty.